thought you were going to have Brad or Grant. Should I even introduce him? No. Okay.
Well, you could, I guess.
Good evening. Welcome to our public input meeting for the Middle Street Bike Lane. My name is Peter Rice. I'm the Director of Public Works. With me this evening is Debbie Finnegan from WSP, our consulting engineer that is taking a fresh set of eyes and looking at the modified bike lane. And then Tyler Reese, our associate engineer with parking and transportation, who's providing support as we move forward. We have a brief presentation before we take public comment. And I think, why don't we go to the next slide? Maybe I have to go out and then come back in. Try to go unshare and then share again. Bear with us for a second. Did you, and also, did you get out of the, did you start the webinar to get us out of?
I believe Kevin did.
Kevin did?
Here comes out.
Oh, and I should have introduced Kevin Russell, our producer this evening, who's a great assistant at all these challenging events. The challenges are with us trying to manage the technology.
There we go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
In addition to Debbie, Grant O'Leary is here as well, who's in the back, providing support for WSP. Next slide, please. So the goals of this project and tonight's discussion is really to comply with or to follow a directive from the past council, which was to review the modified bike lane to ensure that it conforms with DOT's requirements so that we don't jeopardize funding. So to that end, WSP was hired. We've been collecting data on site for the last 6 or 7 months, and WSP has been reviewing that information, and this public input is part of that whole process, so we have the opportunity to take public input. And there's about 16 folks online as well as the folks here in the audience here. So from here, Debbie, I believe, will take the presentation.
I think so.
Next
Go
slide.
ahead. Next slide. Nope.
Nope. Okay. So, quick background. This project's been a long time in the development. I started back in 2010, and through a series of public meetings and secured funding, construction was completed in 2018, and immediately after construction, some desire to make modifications was brought forward, and since it was initially constructed, a series of modifications have been made, leaving us now at the point where we have the configuration that we had last summer.
So, now it's my turn.
And now it's Debbie's turn.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me? Oh, good. Next slide. That'll be helpful. All right. Oh, this is still you. City
Still me?
Still you.
Okay.
City Council. I think you might have just talked about this already a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I thought we had gotten this down. So the past council had asked to modify the buffered bike lane section of the bike lane that had parking outside on the travel lane, and to bring it back to the parking to the curb line for about a quarter of the lane miles of the bike lane. In addition, additional crossing rapid flashing beacons at 2 crosswalks were established, as well as establishing a bicycle boulevard, painting sharrows along Lincoln Avenue. Now we can. There we go.
There we go. So my name is Deborah Finnegan. I work for WSP. I was hired as a third-party reviewer for this project. The review we've done so far all seems good. We have not finished the review. We still have some public input, either here or we're doing door-to-door surveys starting tomorrow, and should be finished tomorrow in this section. So just some general background information. I mean, I know most of you live it, but this is what it looked like before any construction was done and any new pavement markings were done. Next slide. This is what it looked immediately after the project was built. I'm sure you all recognize this pretty well too. Next slide. And this is an example of the changes that were made as they are today. This one, and that were done in 2019 and 2021. Next slide. It's the same thing. And this is another example, and it shows the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Next slide. This one as well. So you can see that some of the blacked out markings, I know that Peter mentioned once a final decision was made that the markings would be done permanently. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So next, these are just to show you what it looks like today. As I stated before, WSP is a third-party reviewer. Our job was to look at the existing conditions, things like crash data, that all the plans that were given to us, parking data. The city did some parking counts for us to review. We're having this public meeting, we're doing the door-to-door survey, and once all the information is compiled, we're going to produce a memorandum that will be given to New Hampshire DOT as well as the city for their review. And that is our job right now. Go ahead. So public outreach is, I'll just repeat it again, you can do it this evening. There are postcards that are out on the table. If you prefer a paper copy to fill out tonight, there's that as well. And then also there is there's the link to the online survey if you prefer just to copy and paste it and put it on your computer at home. Any of those options are available. If you would like a mailed copy, we can do that for you as well. Just give us your name here, or if you get home and like, boy, I wish I had a paper copy, you can call us or email us and we will send that to you so you can send it back. And that is, go ahead. Our next step, I don't think I really need to repeat it, but our next steps are the door-to-door survey for tomorrow and currently this public meeting, so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. But right now it stands that what is currently out there temporarily will be permanent at some point. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. And the next slide. Thank you for joining us. We'll now take comments from those in the audience and the people who are currently on Zoom listening in.
And just to note, this presentation will be online. It's also being broadcasted on Channel 22 at the moment, so there will be opportunity to have further discussion. So, with that, if somebody in the audience would like to speak, please come up, say their name and address, and that'd be great.
Good evening, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. I would like to thank Debbie for the presentation. I was refreshed when basically, at least we'll find out with the survey and everything that happens, refreshed that you see no problem with what we have there today. For the record and for you, I am the previous mayor of Portsmouth. I was on the council that went and made the modifications and changes. I was also, even before I was a councilor, I was an avid resident here in Portsmouth, and I followed this from day one with the modifications when it was presented many, many years ago. So I guess the one thing would be is whether everything has come forward or not. The painting that's been done there, the blackouts and stuff like that, was for the better part, a misunderstanding. When the council went and moved forward with returning the cars back to the curb, within, I don't know, Peter, a week or two after we had gone and done that, I guess there was a misunderstanding on exactly what DOT had actually recommended, and we went to start to paint bike lanes on the outside of the cars, which we all know is probably the most dangerous setup that there is anywhere. And once we contacted DOT with the city manager, Peter Rice, and myself, it was confirmed by DOT that that was not the action that was going to be taken. It was to be returned to the original status, which was necessarily no bike lane and the cars back to the curb. So we returned it to that status. So once that was done, there was more blacking out of painting that needed to be done, and we were all basically assured, Peter and others assured that that black paint was only going to last so long. So obviously that adds to some of the confusion. As far as the funding goes, the $230,000, which is what we got from the federal grant. I have a letter from New Hampshire DOT, from Mr. Bill Watson, that basically said, regardless of the status of what we do, here on forward, because we are doing what they asked us to do, which is to do this study, and I'm glad the city has taken it upon themselves to hire somebody different, a different view, and that there would be no refund of money. Regardless of the outcome, I have the letter. I believe probably the city manager and probably other members of staff have it. Regardless of what happens, the money will not need to be refunded in any way whatsoever. We did this basically to go and allocate, you know, when the Safe Route to School, which is what it was, it didn't go to a school, and we found out, educating ourselves, that it needed to go to an elementary and a middle school. And I believe that the Lincoln connector actually does that, and that's why I believe DOT has gone and said that there will be no funding that would need to be returned. I'm relieved that you're going to do a door-to-door survey. I would make a recommendation. A lot of people in Portsmouth work, especially on that road. I'm very familiar with most of the families that are on there. I would make a suggestion that you do that on a Saturday. It would be, you get a better response. I'm also in hopes with the survey going on, we have a lot of visitors that come here, that at least it's categorized and separated with residents versus non-residents. I mean, it's great that we have people that come and we visit here, but ultimately who has impacted this for the people that live on this street? And I'm grateful that you're talking about going door to door, because it's a safer street. And since we did this, we've had no complaints. We've had no accidents, both bicycle or vehicle. And I guess I'm just going to leave it at that. I look forward to continuing the process. Hopefully we'll have more of these. It is still the winter months, so you're going to have more activity that's going to be on there as bicyclists and stuff come on, kind of thing. My recommendation would be, isn't it something that Peter had gone and said, I believe it's 2023, 2024. This road is up for repaving. I'm hoping we can get this right. My recommendation would be, this is 1,500 feet. I would look at this as a CIP. I would ask, infrastructure is the only way to make this road safe for pedestrians and cyclists of all ages. We have approved, council previous approved a multi-purpose path. I think that this is more than adequate to do something like that, would suffice to keep the cars where they are, and there's plenty of room on this road to do that type of a route, which will take years, but still at the same time, I think it's a safer route to be able to go and do it, and it will give everyone in Portsmouth what they're looking for. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else in the audience would like to speak?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm William Lyons, 62 Mendham Avenue, Portsmouth, and I'd like to speak in favor of retaining and adapting the Middle Street bike lane, not as an isolated 1 mile long fragment, but as a core element of a vibrant future non-motorized network as envisioned in the city's bike and pedestrian plan. I'm a transportation planner and 40-year Portsmouth resident living half a block from the bike lane. Whenever possible, I walk or bike downtown for exercise to reduce energy use and carbon emissions and to free limited parking for others. I was a member of the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Transportation Policy Committee, which developed key principles for a connected and sustainable future multimodal transportation system for Portsmouth, with a key role for walking and biking. I also served on the Residents' Advisory Committee for the Bike Plan, which identified Middle Street as a foundational element of a walk and bike-friendly future. Abandoning the bike lane would be a step backward, ignoring its envisioned role as a foundational element of a future network based on extensive community input and investment in professional planning and engineering that produced not only the bike plan but also this project. I ask that you approach the bike lane in terms of its intended potential, not only as a future bike network, part of a future bike network, but part of a future modern transportation system that offers attractive and affordable options to personal cars, connecting downtown to affordable housing on Lafayette Road, to Pease and C&J, to the hospital. So really looking to the future, looking at connectivity. I'm really all for adapting and reviewing and extending and potentially connecting. But I think that it really needs to be looked at as a core element and not in isolation. I think one of the biggest limitations, and perhaps the reason that I don't use it, if not every day, frequently every week, is that it stops really short of downtown. And I think connecting to the Bike Boulevard in Lincoln can be part of it. But I would really like to see it remain as a really key and active element. It's really an opportunity to advance the principles that Portsmouth has developed in its policy plan and in the bike plan. And I would always like to see the debate and the discussion refer back to those core documents. In fact, this is an excellent opportunity to engage the community, and I'm all for the survey and data collection, and I hope it not only includes the residents of Middle Street and the neighborhood, but also the broader community, all of whom will be really impacted by whatever changes are made. It's an excellent opportunity to engage the community, as I said, both on this project, but think of the project in the larger context. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Any other speakers?
Q&A, right?
Yeah. Yep.
In regards to door-to-door.
I'm sorry. Could you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christy Jorgensen.
Okay, and could you speak to the microphone so we could hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Speak if you. Yes.
Okay. Christy Jorgensen, I live on Mill Street.
Yep.
Question in regards to door-to-door survey, can you define that for me, exactly what that means? Is there a leaflet that's given, a questionnaire? Or is it just a survey where someone walks around with a clipboard door-to-door?
Yes, and yes, and so.
That doesn't answer my question.
I know. So the survey, they'll have a paper survey that they will ask if they can fill it out with you while you were standing there, whatever your comments are, and write them down, and you can provide your name or not. But there'll also be a postcard saying somebody's not home that has all that information. There's a QR code on it as well as the link, so that if they are not happen to be home when they hit, knock on their door, they will know that somebody was there, and hopefully they'll fill it out. And there's also on the postcard that will be provided, that will be left if nobody's home or their business can't talk because they're busy or whatever the case may be. There's also an option to call us or email us and say, can I have a paper copy? And we'll send you a paper copy with a stamp, an envelope that has a stamp on it. So it makes it super easy to just fill it out and send it in.
Okay. And as far as residents, who are you covering as far as, is it just strictly Middle Street or the feeder streets? Are you including all the butters?
The door-to-door is Middle Street.
Okay,
The survey is available for the entire residency.
okay, all right. Just something I wanted to bring up in regards to communication with all departments, and especially after observing the recent PTS committee meeting. I received my notice about this evening's meeting posted on my door on March 4th, during which time my family and we were away on vacation, school vacation. The abutting residents received the announcement less than 1 week prior to this meeting. And I just want to personally thank Mark Siracusa of the committee for his thoughtful consideration and speaking up for the abutters during the March 3rd PTS committee meeting. I found the comments from others on the committee during the meeting, I found them very disrespectful and arrogant, and especially when referencing the residents on Middle Street, and especially when you look at the history of where we've been and what we've gone through in the past few years. Yes, there is a newsletter that residents can choose to subscribe to or look up city information, but we also have busy lives and cannot be checking online every day for newsletters and updates on the websites for last-minute meeting notices such as this. Due to the high volumes of emails, some residents choose to opt out of such newsletters, so the city manager should not expect everyone to be subscribed to the city newsletter to receive last-minute notices. I find this to be a very narrow-minded way of thinking about it, especially when you're working with the public. The PTS committee, as well as all committees and the city council members, should consider all abutters and residents when making any changes in the city, and especially when changes impact the abutters. All departments should be expected to be forthcoming, transparent, and utilize every method possible when communicating to abutters and residents, and allow plenty of notice when scheduling and posting meetings. I just want to bring this out up front right now because I know that we're dealing with this and this study. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I do expect communication and notices with all abutters throughout this whole process. And I thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Kevin Coyle. We live at 668 Middle Street, which you have a nice picture of on your postcard that you're sending out.
Oh.
And we appreciate that. You know, I want to tell you a story. When I came home the first time when the bike lanes were established, and I said, why are people parking in the street? This makes absolutely no sense. And for us, coming out of our driveway, it really made no sense. We could not see, we were taking our life in our hands coming out of our driveway when the cars were parked, you know, away from the street. Whatever you do, we would ask that you not move the cars back to where they were. We would ask you not to put the bollards back. They really narrowed the street for everybody. You couldn't get fire trucks down there if you were trying to get down. Trucks were always hitting them, and they absolutely made no sense. My wife, my daughter, and I bike frequently through the city of Portsmouth. We primarily use Lincoln Street because it's a bike-friendly street. Middle Street is not so bike-friendly, but it's wide enough that if you want to bike down it, you certainly can. But putting the cars where they were was really difficult for us as residents of that street. And knowing a lot of residents on that street, nobody was in favor of having the cars out in the street, essentially. So we would ask, whatever you decide, please do not put the cars back in the street. Thanks.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Kevin.
Hi, Sue Polidora, 245 Middle Street. And I've lived in the city for probably 45 years or so, maybe a little less. And 100% of the time that I lived in Portsmouth, I lived in two different addresses, both of them on Middle Street. So I'm very familiar with this street. I drive it every single day, several times. When this change happened and these cars moved to almost the middle of the road, every time I drove through Middle Street, I was like, and I saw a truck coming the opposite way, I was holding on to my wheel and saying a prayer to make sure that we missed each other. And we did, by a few inches. So not only do I have to be concerned about this truck that's coming this way, and I'm going that way, but also I'm concerned about the distracted person that is parked in the middle of the road. They opened the door at the wrong time. I'm not only going to take the door, I'm going to take that person too. So all of these arguments I'm hearing about cyclists being doored and all of that, yes, there is a lot of possibility for a lot of harm to come to both drivers and people who are riding their bikes, because it doesn't allow that the change in space makes, instead of just having one person being concerned about the outcome, now both drivers and cyclists are going to be in danger of whatever may happen there. Middle Street is way too busy of a street to do this again. The Lincoln Street routing for the bicycles is less apt to vehicular traffic. It's a lot better. Like I said, I drive on that street, and I have for a very long time. I think I can count with the fingers in both hands the times that I've seen someone biking on Middle Street. And I see absolutely no sense to have those cars move back the way they were. It's just, I think it creates more dangers for the people, both the people that are riding the bicycles and those who are driving cars down that road. So just wanted to say these comments, and I'll keep watching for more news about this.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, my name is Sally Baybutt. I have a small business on Middle Street. In fact, about 2 blocks down from that view right there on the same side. And I'm kind of late to the game here, so, and I'm listening to these comments, and I have some questions. Well, first of all, can I arrange to have a survey, a face-to-face survey? Is that possible?
Yep,
Because I'd love to do that. It's
yep.
easier for you to, okay,
Happy to do it tonight. If you have time after we're all done, we can do it this evening or a different time.
okay. One question I had is why is the, I'm on the side where I am where the parking was lost, and so there's just the path. And I just wonder, I've always wondered, why did it stop at this point? And there's parking there on, I think that's Highland. Is there parking beyond Highland, but there isn't on this side of Middle Street?
The bike lane transitions from a buffered bike lane to a Sharrow type of bike lane because the traffic, it was deemed that you'd lose additional parking in that area was one of the big
Yes.
drivers. And the speed of traffic was starting to get, you don't want to have traffic going greater than 30 miles an hour if you're going to be having Sharrows. Preferably it's 25 or lower.
What are Sharrows?
Sharrows are shared bike lanes. It's
Okay.
the bicycle gets out in the travel lane.
So it's, yeah.
So
But
it was
aren't they-
it was felt that by this time the traffic was being slower, so it was an acceptable transition point to get bicycles back into the traffic, as well as we would be saving valuable parking spaces as well. So that was kind of the balance that was made. I to a certain extent, I mean, that's, as I recall, those are some of the reasons that were there.
Okay. It feels a little bit like bad luck on my part because I lost parking in front of my business, but I guess, has to do with speed. And speaking of speed, this was mentioned earlier, is it possible to mitigate the speed on the road, and this maybe it's not part of the bike?
So as an aside, parking, traffic, and safety has taken up speeds throughout the city as designated in all roadways, focusing a lot on the gateway areas, but over the overall network of throughout the city. So it is something, the challenge is that people drive the speed they're comfortable at, and when a roadway is configured in a manner that allows them to feel comfortable driving at faster speeds, they will drive at those faster speeds despite what the speed limits are. So modification.
So speed tables, perhaps?
Speed tables, perhaps. So there are.
That would make it safer, walking, biking, everything.
So as the former mayor pointed out, there is a paving project that's slated a couple of years from now. And prior to doing that work, we're looking at potential configuration changes to improve safety for pedestrians as well as bicyclists, as well as traffic calming.
Great.
So prior to that, there'll be public process, there'll be input, but at this point, that is not what this project's looking at.
Right. I'm kind of catty corner from Cass Street, which that intersection, as probably everybody knows, is really dangerous. And I'm there in my business hearing honking and screeching and whatever. So speed is an issue, I think. And people are talking about the cars, the way it used to be where the cars were set back from the sidewalk, the path was in between. Is it possible that configuration is coming back?
At this point, the project's not complete.
Okay.
This evaluation's not complete, but as Debbie had indicated, that her review to date there's nothing driving her to say that that's.
So you're,
It's
Okay.
almost engineer's preference to
Yeah,
a certain
I was just gonna
extent.
say that,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, every community has a different way of looking at bike lanes, whether it be what you had before or what you have now, or sharrows, or how, communities look at things differently, like your community is looking at different things in this section. And it doesn't make it wrong or doesn't make it right. It's just sometimes it's a preference, sometimes it's speed related. But
Yeah.
in this case, it's
I'm sure you all have looked at the best practices throughout the country, all the bike paths going on, New York City, et cetera.
and there's national standards for that too.
Yeah.
I mean, for bike lanes that are used, so.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it. I appreciate answering those questions, and I'll look forward to the survey.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally.
We could take up. Yeah.
My name is David Allen, 383 Union Street. Live right off the bike path, and I'm going to speak first very quickly as a resident and non-member of SABRE, and secondly, representing SABRE's Seacoast area bike riders. So as a resident, I ride pretty much any day the weather allows me to. So I'm on that section of street easily, 120 days a year. And while I know the previous configuration definitely had its issues, and I think a lot of those had to do with the fact that it was originally conceived as a trial and just a paint operation, so that was why it was done that way. I think the fact that the road hadn't been rebuilt and the bike path went over catch basins and went into some areas that was a little not perfectly configured for a bike lane. I think what both the previous mayor and Peter mentioned about doing it correctly once the road is rebuilt is a very important aspect to look at, and I'll be interested to see how this plays out after you do your review, Ms. Finnegan. But I personally, unless the infrastructure is changed, I wouldn't feel comfortable riding that bike lane with the cars moved out and up against the curb because of the catch basins and the fact that snow windrows always ended up there. This time of year, you'd probably have ice chunks and whatnot. So there's something better than blacking it out, but I don't think reverting back to the original is my personal preference. Now, SABRE hat on, I would say that we are very much interested in this. I think there's probably a number of SABRE participants who are either watching from home or on their way back that they couldn't get here, but we are willing to get involved in whatever way could benefit the city. And although I know this was a Safe Routes to School project and it was intended to get to the schools, I think what Mr. Lyons said is a key point, and that is that you don't want to have a bike lane to nowhere. And I think getting access to downtown is very important, both from a safety perspective, and I think it benefits the city when there's bike infrastructure that tourists and people can use to get to that downtown area. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Maybe we could take somebody from online. Tyler?
Kevin, can you please recognize Gerald Duffy?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Gerald Duffy. I live at 428 Pleasant Street. I'm in Puerto Rico at the moment, and I just had to mention that. I'm sorry. It's
Just rub it in?
it's a little warmer down here. I'm a member of SABRE also, but tonight I'm just speaking for myself. I've got a fair amount of street cred when it comes to cycling. I figured out a couple of moments ago I've been riding for 68 years. have ridden tens of thousands of miles all over Europe, in my native UK, and since 1983 in my beloved hometown of Portsmouth. I lived on Middle Street for a total of 6 years, diagonally opposite Cass Street. We're probably fairly close to where Sally has her office. And so I know the street very well, and I know a safe bike environment when I see one. And I know that when they introduced the protected buffered lanes, that it was a huge improvement in terms of bike safety. It's all about, in urban environments, it's all about adequate buffering. The couple of aspects to that. One is there's the perception of safety, which is very important when you're just basically a person on a pair of wheels and you've got lots of large vehicles moving around you. So the perception of safety is important. But then, of course, there's the practical issue of being doored. And we know that there was a rider actually killed on a bike lane in Durham a few years ago who was doored by inattentive driver. So it's very important to have sufficient buffering to make sure that doesn't happen. I also recognize that this was a project funded by the Safe Routes to School grant, and that in some ways I think muddied this project a little bit. And I understand that from that perspective it probably didn't deliver as it was expected to. I know if anyone's driven down Lincoln Ave when the middle school is about to start or ending, you see pelotons of these middle school kids are basically taking over Lincoln Ave. It's fabulous. They own that road. So that that really is not one of my concerns. But for the rest of us, for everyone older than a middle schooler, and that's actually most of us, Middle Street is less safe than it was when that first configuration was put in. And that's contrary to what Rick Beck said earlier. That's his opinion, I know, but I respectfully point out from the data, city data, that traffic speed has increased since the bollards and the buffering was removed, and ridership is way down. It started to peak partly because of COVID, I think. We got a lot more new riders, but ridership has dropped, and that's the rest of us, not the school kids who've been affected. So that's a disappointment because for the broader community, it was a step backwards, and demand for safe cycling is increasing constantly. My cohort, my demographic is gradually taking to e-bikes. So you're gonna have a bunch of wobbly seniors riding around town who will also need buffered bike lanes to stay safe. So this is something that, I know it's part of our overall planning with bike and ped infrastructure to improve multimodal transportation. So I hope that the council will really get behind that as a policy-driven direction. I'd also ask the council to revisit the idea of developing a long-range plan for Middle Street. I know that repaving is coming up, and maybe that could be, it could be built into that. Last year, Councillor Tabor suggested that he proposed a study that would look ahead, a long-range project that would vision a Middle Street that was more of a boulevard, that had permanent infrastructure that would be designed to suit residents, drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. And that would be a wonderful project to kick off and to give a lot of thought to. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak up. I hope that this council will generally support and prioritize bike pedestrian initiatives, and for all the right reasons. Public safety, sustainability, and then just generally community health and recreation. So thanks so much for your work, and thanks for listening to me.
Thanks, Jerry. Anybody else in the public?
Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes. Kevin, will you please recognize Frederick Calcinari?
Hi, this is Fred. I am a resident. I live at 1246 South Street. I've been a Portsmouth resident since 2017, so relatively recent. I do like the buffered bike lanes on Middle Street. I ride my bike in the city, and I appreciate having the buffering on the northbound side. Obviously, there is no buffering on the southbound side, and I would love to see buffering on both sides. So I just wanted to comment and say that I'm a bicyclist, and I like I'm glad the city's taking initiative to make biking more safe, and the more designated, dedicated space for bicyclists that we can create would be very much appreciated by people like me who use their bicycles regularly. And also, I just want to make a comment that in all my years of bicycling, I've heard stories about people hitting car doors in all situations. Anytime a bike is riding by a parked car, hitting the car door is a risk, whether there's a bike lane or not. So I wouldn't make an argument not to have a bike lane just because that can happen, because it can happen whether there's a bike lane or not. So that's my thought on that subject. Thanks for the ability to speak here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Fred. Before we take another, are there any other folks in the audience that would like to speak? Not seeing anybody up, so why don't we go ahead.
Kevin, please recognize Ann Pabo.
Hi, this is Ann Pugo. I'm at 160 Bartlett Street. I'm also a volunteer on the board of Seacoast Area Bicycle Riders, SABRE, with David and Jerry, who spoke earlier. And I just wanted to say that I don't consider myself a bicyclist, or I don't wear the bike shorts. I wear my jeans. I ride my bike to work or to the grocery store. I sold my car. Granted, my husband has a car. But I just want to say that Portsmouth is attractive to me, and I've lived here since 2000. It's attractive because I can walk, I can ride my bike, and I somewhat felt safe on Middle Street until March 30th last year, when I rode my bike to my outdoor gym class, and the buffered bike lane was gone without any notice. And that was a shock. I called one of the counselors. It was 7:30 in the morning. Anyway, what I want to say is we don't all have a car, and it might be a choice. It might be a good choice given the price of gas right now. And it would be a good thing for the city to have, how can I say, a more complete street view. And maybe the best way to reduce the speed is to go back to a narrower road. So anyway, I just want to say we need to think of not just the cars. And I understand that the people who live on Middle Street also need to have their parking. But we need to make the connections between all these neighborhoods. And it's not just people on Middle Street who ride their bike. It's me on Bartlett. It's someone else on South Street. It's a whole city, right? So I hope we can make this work for everybody. And even if we don't wear the funny lycra shorts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Tyler, anybody else?
Kevin, please recognize Seth Levine.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Good. My name is Seth Levine. I live on Middle Street. It's 569 Middle Street, next to Sally Baba, pretty much across from Cass on the corner of Weiber. I have a bike. I ride my bike, not much in the winter, and I very rarely ride on Middle Street. I go downtown, I go all over town. But Middle Street is a road we call it Route 1. It's got a lot of traffic, a lot of people. I have two dogs, and they're familiar with every bike that comes down the street, and they're familiar with every pedestrian. They're very, very attentive. And there's a lot of pedestrians that come down, and I saw the data on the number of bikes, and except for a brief spurt when there was a study, there was not consistent bikes on the street. The reason is really simple. Like, for example, we moved a lot of this stuff to Lincoln. That's because that's the place to ride other places. There was an individual in town who was talking about how important it was for his daughter to ride to the high school on Middle Street. And I almost chuckled because my kids went to the high school. They rode around town, they walked around town. They never went on Middle Street because they don't want to get killed. They're not stupid. Even with the bollards, even with the parking, even with the lanes the way they are, I can't ride in those lanes the way they were or the way they are now. Certainly not in the winter, even in the summer. It's filled with crap. It's just not a place that I ever feel comfortable. I try to stay away from cars. Cars are my enemy when I'm on a bike. And I drive a lot. Most of us drive cars, most of us park cars. I operate a business at my property, and it's commercial. I also live there. And it's tough to get parking because of these lanes and the lack of parking. People are parked in front of my house on Wybird a lot, which is public parking. I have no issue with that. But they're parked all the way down the street. And that makes it uncomfortable as a operator of a motor vehicle. So we're favoring a relatively small number of bike riders and sacrificing what I think is the city streets for that. Pedestrian walkway with, I've been in cities that have beautiful pedestrian walkways, bikes and cars, and businesses on each side, restaurants and museums. Quite frankly, Middle Street is an old street that was designed when we had single-lane horse cars. It's not appropriate for that kind of stuff. There's barely any room for cars, let alone bikes. Less traveled streets like Lincoln, and I use a lot of little streets and alleys all over town. You know, when you ride a bike or walk, you get to know those little shortcuts. You don't do that when you drive in a car much. That's far, far safer. When that individual was talking to me about his kid riding the Middle Street, we took a walk around town. And it was nice. We just took a little shortcut that I learned from my kids going to the high school. And it made a lot more sense than riding a bike on Middle Street. No kid will ever do that, ever. It doesn't happen. You'll never see kids on Middle Street. It just doesn't happen. That's the school idea. We wanted this for schools. I understand everybody's got good intentions. I really appreciate the fact that part of our town. But we've got too much money and too many projects. We're trying to find problems to solve when there's no problem. Long before we ever talked about bike lanes, I rode my bike in town. I don't belong to Staber. I don't ride with other people. I go places. And I'm invisible. That's the way I like it. It's always been that way with me. I don't speak at these meetings. I don't go out. I listen to some stuff. I watch it. I read the paper. We're solving a problem that doesn't exist. There is no problem. You can ride a bike and get anywhere in town. You can walk. I mean, I can't go out to the other side of town. I don't want to walk to the other fire station down Lafayette, say hi to somebody. I'll drive there. I don't walk to Walmart. But I can pedal over there, but I don't go on Lafayette Avenue. I take shortcuts. I go places where there isn't traffic. I think with the cars on the middle of the street, it was really bad. It was hard to drive, hard to get out of cross streets, hard to bike as well. The street was rough. We could theoretically fix it and make it nice and make it perfect, but maintaining it like that is just ridiculously difficult. And you're trying to make a bike lane in the middle of the interstate lanes. It has the same approach. Gee, everybody wants to drive to Maine. Why don't we take Route 95 and instead of having the middle lane have cars in it, we'll just make a bike lane. And nobody would ride on it because it's way too dangerous. It's not the place to put it. Route 1 is not the place for a bike lane. It interferes with traffic, it interferes with parking, it interferes with safety. We're lucky people haven't gotten killed. Anyway, that's all I have. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Kevin, will you please recognize Len Polizotto?
Hi, Len Polizotto, 660 Middle Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So, one thing that really sticks in my mind is I was talking to one of our firemen, a Portsmouth Fire, actually the senior member of the fire department, when we had the cars parked in the middle of the street. And he said he couldn't even get the fire truck down the road. And it was a real problem when they had to go, you know, in emergency situations. And that really stuck with me. The middle street is just not wide enough to do all this stuff that we want to do with it. In addition, as a resident, to pull out of my driveway, it's impossible with the cars moved out into the street because you like to look down the road a ways to see what's coming, and you can't see because the cars parked there far out in the road really block your view. So we talk about safety. We have to consider that there are multiple stakeholders that have to be considered for safety. And coming out of our driveway is a very serious safety issue when the cars are in the road. The other point I'd like to make is I am a biker. So I ride my bike. And I remember when they first put in the bike lane, I figured, let's try this. And it turned out to be really stupid because the bike lane is just, you know, I don't know, not even a half a mile. And then you're not in a bike lane anymore. So having a bike lane in such a short piece of Middle Street, in addition to all its safety issues, just makes no sense. So I strongly encourage that we keep the cars on the curb for safety of everybody. And then the final point is, Middle Street is really a pretty street. And putting all these stupid bollards all over the place really detracts from our beautiful city. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Len.
Kevin, please recognize Councilman Andrew Bagley.
Yes, hi, Andrew Bagley, 40 Chauncey Street. I figured I should speak. I was the person who walked with Seth, and he did show me some alternate routes to school that weren't, in my opinion, very practical for my daughter, but would work for others. I think, you know, we can't keep modifying the bike lanes every 6 months. I was sorry to see them go. I think at this point, we have to look long-term, as other speakers have mentioned, and find a solution that incorporates a safe route downtown for everyone. Now, I do walk downtown from the Portsmouth Market area, so I do walk along this route quite a bit, sometimes 2-3 times a day, and I see bikers quite often. I don't see the families that I was seeing when the bike lanes were there, but I certainly see the guy on the recumbent just about every day, and I see other bikers, even in weather like this, just about every day, obviously more in the summers. So I guess I would just add those comments. And Seth, if you're still listening, we'll have to go for a walk again sometime soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor. All set. Anybody else in the public would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Marie Nelson. I live at 20 Doris Ave in Portsmouth. But I grew up on the corner of Lincoln and Middle, which is a little bit south of this, in this picture. And I can agree with what everyone is saying here, you know, in terms of safety. And as we look at this picture, we're looking at debris right there in the ground that if a biker went over that, it would probably flip over anyway. So my big concern, and this was, you know, previous to COVID, when we talked about having the company come in and do the survey, was this was built for a safe route to school. And now we're at a point where we're talking about bike lanes, and now we're going to have to maintain them, and are we going to have the funding for that? I was hoping that we would get the presentation and, you know, the results before, but it's coming the other way, which is fine. But I'd like to hear more of the findings before we decide that, because it seems like now we're just going with the bike route. So thank you very much for your time.
Anybody else in the public that would like to speak?
Can I address the bike lane specifically? This was regarding the communication.
Sure, come on up and.
I didn't realize we were going to get in depth about the bike lane, so I thought I'd add my 2 cents as well. I just hope and expect that every member of both the PTS committee and the City Council goes back to the March 12th, 2020 public session and listen to each and every one of the residents who spoke at the meeting, along with many that communicated by emails and letters regarding the bike lane project. The majority agree that the bike project was a colossal failure. The intent was good, but the project, the outcome was not very good. This project was expensive, it was a waste of resources, and should have been eliminated as part of the CIP years ago. The bike lane was underutilized, unsafe, created more traffic, noise, and exhaust pollution, and reduced the value of my property aesthetically. It was misleading, as this was supposed to be a safe routes to school project and turned into a personal agenda for a minority group of cyclists who do not even live on the street, or the majority of them do not live on the street. I mean, I'm all for safety, but there are other options, and I hope if the state doesn't accept what comes out of this study, if we're looking at other options rather than what we've experienced in the past. I mean, I'm open to looking at sharrowing if we need to share the road with the cyclists, but on top of that, I would also ask that you remove the rest of the bollards and bring back the parking that was completely eliminated prior to this project being implemented. I know that there's some sharing downtown. I'm fine sharing the road with a cyclist, but I'm not, I just find it completely unacceptable to eliminate the parking and what's been removed so far. We already have a serious parking issue all around the downtown area or on the outskirts of downtown, and we can't lose any more parking. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Kevin, please recognize Ned Reynolds.
Hello, everyone. Ned Reynolds. I live at 110 Aldrich Road, just off of Middle Street. Many of you know that I've been a longtime advocate for improving safety of bicycling and walking throughout the city in my 21 years living here, and was on a member of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee back when we developed the Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan a decade ago or so. So I was very glad to see finally the implementation of the Middle Street bike lane project. Middle Street is, a major artery, obviously, of the city, and it goes to downtown, and so it should accommodate bicycles. I appreciate what many have said about, Seth and others, there's different meandering routes to get to places. Especially the middle school. I have 3 children who all would bike, and yeah, they would go down Middle Street. But many other places to go, like Prescott Park, downtown, etc., where you want to be able to go straight down Middle Street. So I applaud the bike lane being there. I want to point out something that hasn't really been mentioned yet. Peter referred to it earlier when he said, as far as driving speeds, as long as I've lived in Portsmouth, people have complained that people drive too fast. Of course, we're all people, and sometimes we all drive too fast. And the car speeds on Middle Street used to be regularly, 40, 45, sometimes 50 people come whipping down Middle Street. Since the implementation of the bike lane, the visual narrowing of the roadway, I believe the data backs up that car speeds on Middle Street are noticeably lower. And so it's safer for everyone, drivers included. Other drivers are safer. People pulling out of their driveways are safer. People pulling out of cross streets, turning onto Middle Street are safer because the general speed is lower because of the presence of the bike lanes. I will admit, though, that the separated bike lane, the buffered bike lane, the portion on Lower Middle Street, on the north side, that even to me, an advocate, I recognize that was problematic, primarily because of what Peter talked about earlier. The road wasn't engineered to accommodate that. It was a retrofit. The visual crown of the road wasn't correct to accommodate it. So I hope that where we're going, tonight, after the results of this new survey and the data review, is to maintain, what we have now. The bike lanes running the full length, as they do now. Re-implementation of the bollards, quite a reduced number of bollards, I want to point out, from what originally went in. I believe, I know some people think them unsightly, but, maybe we can find better looking somethings, but the visual separation makes it safer, and again, visually narrows the roadway for drivers, and drivers have to pay more attention, and when they pay more attention and see the narrower roadway, they drive slower. So everyone is safer, including people crossing on the added crosswalks, lit up crosswalks. Thank you to Peter and your team for putting those in. We have one at Aldrich Road, and it's terrific. And the other one up at Lawrence. They're great. I would like to take this opportunity to point out that bike lanes or no bike lanes, one of the reasons, one of the danger spots on Middle Street is the S curve that's between Aldrich and it would be Park Street. And it's very dark there because there's a sort of a noticeable lack of a spot where one street light would do wonders. That was the spot where I think the worst accident that happened when we had the separated bike lane. It was a very drunk driver that that caused that accident, but he rear-ended one of the parked cars, but it was right in that spot that's very dark. And if we could ask Eversource we could seek to add a street light in that spot, I think that would help everyone. So I want to applaud everything and support everything that Bill Lyons said about Middle Street being the backbone for a citywide system, and appreciate everybody's work on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. As I said before, this is really just this part of the overall process. We will be posting this presentation to the city's website, and we look forward to coming up with a long-term program that'll address safety for pedestrians and cyclists and motorists as well. So at that, I would like to thank everybody for coming out, and have a good evening.